On the morning of December 17, 1944, at 05:30, near the Belgian village of Hansfeld, a sound that no tank commander wants to hear cut through the icy dawn. The engine of a Tiger tank, coughing, sputtering, then dying completely. SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, commander of the Waffen-SS spearhead for Hitler's Ardennes Offensive, slammed his fist on the turret hatch in frustration. His driver, Unterscharführer Werner Wubel, tried desperately to restart the 700-horsepower Maybach engine. The fuel gauge told the real story. The tank wasn't malfunctioning, it was bone dry. The small reserve tank was empty as well. Peiper climbed down into the freezing air. All around him, in the faint early morning mist, lay the armored vanguard of Germany's last great offensive. 67 tanks, 149 half-tracks, and nearly 5,000 elite SS troops, sitting motionless for lack of fuel. Ahead lay the abandoned American position at Hansfeld, retreating so rapidly that campfires still burned, coffee steamed in tin cups, and equipment lay scattered. What caught Peiper's eye next made him freeze. Rows upon rows of U.S. jerry cans, thousands of them, stacked like a military miracle. His adjutant, Hauptsturmführer Hans Grulla, cracked one open and inhaled. High-octane American gasoline. Peiper walked among the mountains of fuel cans, counting quickly. He estimated roughly 50,000 gallons, enough to power his entire Kampfgruppe all the way to the Meuse River. Enough, in theory, to tip the balance of the entire offensive. Yet instead of triumph, Peiper felt something darker spreading in his chest. If the Americans could abandon such vast quantities of fuel without hesitation, then Germany had not merely underestimated them, it had fundamentally misunderstood the industrial world it was fighting.
6 months earlier, in June 1944, Armaments Minister Albert Speer had warned Hitler that the synthetic fuel industry, the Reich's only real fuel lifeline, was collapsing under Allied bombing. The Luna Works, which had produced 175,000 tons of fuel in April, delivered only 5,000 tons by September. Other hydrogenation plants operated at a mere fraction of capacity. In 1944, the United States produced 1.8 billion barrels of crude oil. Germany and all territories under its control produced only 33 million barrels, less than 2% of America's total. The Wehrmacht was trying to wage modern mechanized warfare with logistics rooted in the 19th century, while the Allies drowned in petroleum abundance. Planning for the Ardennes Offensive demonstrated this stark imbalance. German logistics officer Major Friedrich Seemann calculated that the offensive needed 4.5 million gallons of fuel to reach Antwerp. Hitler allocated 5 million, yet barely half reached frontline units. From the start, the operation depended on capturing Allied depots, a plan born of desperation. The contrast with American capabilities was almost surreal. The U.S. supply system in France used pipeline networks, the famous Red Ball Express, and thousands of trucks delivering 12,500 tons of supplies a day. By December 1944, U.S. forces in Europe consumed 1.2 million gallons of fuel every day and still received more than they used, building reserves even during combat. Peiper, just 29 years old, was no amateur. Decorated repeatedly for his service on the Eastern Front, he knew fuel was more valuable than ammunition. His Kampfgruppe had been designated the main thrust of the German attack. But the day before the offensive, General Sepp Dietrich had delivered a chilling message. You will have enough fuel to reach the Meuse if you capture American supplies. Peiper's starting allocation was 31,000 gallons, barely enough for 50 miles of movement. The Meuse lay 65 miles away.
As the offensive began on December 16th, German artillery unleashed more shells in 2 hours than had been allocated for entire campaigns earlier in the war. Yet even this display masked a crumbling rear-area supply system. Peiper's column moved out at 7 a.m., immediately slowed by narrow forest roads never meant for heavy armor. An American reconnaissance platoon of only 18 men at Lanzerath held up Peiper for nearly 10 hours. 10 hours of engines idling, 10 hours of fuel evaporating into the winter air. By the time the SS column reached Hansfeld the next morning, they had traveled 20 miles and burned nearly 40% of their fuel. That made the mountains of U.S. gasoline they found even more staggering. The Americans had not even tried to destroy the depot. It was merely a forward supply point, yet it held more fuel than a German panzer division might receive in a month. As Peiper's men refueled, they discovered shipping papers showing that the gasoline had traveled from Texas to New York, across the Atlantic to Liverpool, then to Normandy, and finally 400 miles overland to Belgium, all in just 6 weeks. The sheer logistical power behind that supply chain shook Peiper to his core. A Stars and Stripes newspaper lying nearby announced a new pipeline delivering 300,000 gallons per day, more than Peiper's entire Kampfgruppe would ever receive. Germany, meanwhile, was dying for lack of fuel. Civilian cars had vanished years earlier. Farmers returned to horse-drawn plows. The Luftwaffe grounded most aircraft for lack of aviation gasoline. Pilot training hours dropped from 250 to 60. Even submarines were restricted. Gasoline theft was treated as a Gestapo matter. With the fuel captured at Hansfeld, Peiper's column surged ahead, capturing more depots and supplies. But everywhere the Americans had fuel dumps measured in millions of gallons. When the SS reached Stavelot, they found a depot containing over 2 million gallons, enough to guarantee reaching the Meuse. But American engineers had already received orders: destroy everything before it can be captured.
Captain John Brewster of the 291st Engineers ordered gasoline poured between the stacks. White phosphorus grenades turned the depot into a firestorm. When Peiper arrived, he found a black pillar of smoke towering into the sky. 2 million gallons burned willingly, more fuel than Germany had used in the entire offensive. Across the region, American units set fire to other depots: 1.1 million gallons at Tropois, 2.5 million at Spa. Within a week, Americans destroyed over 8 million gallons deliberately, more than the Germans had allocated for the entire operation. Meanwhile, the Red Ball Express continued delivering 20,000 tons daily. The pipeline network pumped more than 8 million gallons every single day to Allied troops, meaning the U.S. was actually increasing its reserves even while fighting off the German offensive. By December 19th, Peiper's tanks were being abandoned not because they were destroyed, but because they were empty. Allied intercepts revealed Germany's critical shortage, and U.S. commanders ordered that all fuel stocks be destroyed before capture. American C-47s airdropped 160,000 gallons of fuel into besieged Bastogne, more than Peiper had left for his entire force. By December 21st, Peiper was encircled near La Glaise with barely 1,000 gallons left, while the American units surrounding him had allocations of hundreds of thousands of gallons per